We are going to continue to be inundated by the Zillows of the world and the discount brokers of the world and the online brokers of the world, and that's just the fact of the matter. I mean, there's no way around it. It is the way. I mean, part of me applauds the Amazons of the world and that efficiency, but I struggle with every time I go out and shop at Amazon, it's putting the death knell in Brazos bookstore and River Oaks bookstore and Lyft over there on 19th Street. At some point, we're going to have to say the same thing. I'm willing to support a small person and pay more and go out of my way to shop. I had to buy Fady wanted cycling shoes for spin cycling. I know nothing about this topic. But it's not that easy to buy spin cycling shoes, in case you wondered. I went to Soul Cycle, and they gave me a little lesson on spin cycling shoes, and all their shoes say Soul Cycle. So I didn't really want to buy Soul Cycle spin shoes. I wanted to buy spin shoes you could use at other places other than Soul Cycle or whatever. They referred me to 3 places. I did go to 3 places. Went back to Blue Line in the Heights or whatever. They did not have them. I went over to another little place on West Gray and another little place on Montrose. The whole time of this exercise, I keep thinking it's easier to do this on Amazon. It is just easier to do it on Amazon. And are people going to just go to Amazon at some point? There will be no spin cycling shoe stores around if people only go to Amazon. In reality, I bought the damn things on Amazon because I just got frustrated. Of course, they weren't the right size. Arturo had his first experience of returning the Amazon Soul Cycle spin shoes. That's not that easy a topic either. And I will wait and go back in February and find spin shoes from some store or whatever, or just order them. But it made me think about, this is the way the consumer, they like the ease of sitting at home in their couch, in their boxer shorts, and ordering those sort of things. And that's a good thing, but what will be the consequence of those sort of things? When I see these presentations, I see a fair amount. Remember, I'm fairly well read, so I read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and all the Inman News, and all these sort of things every day of my life. On vacation with my children, I still make myself do these sort of things. I'm always thinking about that disruption. And it leads us to our topic of the role of the realtor. Those people, those apps, those websites can find a house easier than we can. And they can make that offer easier than we can. But they do not have the knowledge or the expertise or the ability to manage the whole transaction and offer the same level of advice on a survey, on deed restrictions, on inspections, on repairs, on the cost of maintenance after the purchase. There's none of those sort of things. The one that open door, whatever, and they offer you 10% less, they take it without the repairs. At some point, that company is going to get caught with a house with foundation repairs, or termites they didn't know about, or mold remediation, or a sex offender next door, or something that while they were able to help person A, they're going to screw person B. And so we must focus as an industry on our inherent value and transition the message out from finding houses and into our true value, which is the process, the procedure, and the service after the sale. And if we're not going to do those sort of things, we're going to find ourselves obsolete. If you're not spending your time, spend less time worrying about the comps. Tony had a situation with a house today. I spoke last night at Houstonia Magazine. I get to a fair amount. Every major magazine in 2017, when they had a real estate issue, we were on the forefront of those issues. We're fairly entrenched into the media at this point in our life, because I think it's important for you to know that the brokerage firm has respect of these sort of things, especially the media partners. We need to get off the comps altogether. I wish appraisals would just go away. If there's one thing that I think is obsolete, I think it's the appraisal world. We can get rid of every damn one of them. It's a total waste of money. The only thing banks should consider is whether or not I can make the payment or not. That's all they should focus on. And at some point, that's the next disruptor I want to go work on over there. Screw the appraisal world and just say, Star, if you can afford $1 million house, then I'm going to loan you the money on $1 million house. I don't care if it's worth $400,000 or $1.5 million. The loan should be based on my ability to purchase it and pay for it. Not what happens up or down the chain of what happened 3 months ago or 6 months ago or down the street, because there's no real way to make those comparisons. When Tony had a house, and if her client wants this house in Montrose for $500,000 because they can't find anything else for $500,000, yes, it's on a smaller lot, but yes, it's a better location. Yes, it has tile countertops, but she likes the tile countertops. So if it had granite and was more updated, but the buyer hated the granite, it doesn't make it worth any more to Tony's client. Tony's client should focus on whether or not she can afford it or not. And not only consider the comparables of what's happened in the last 6 months for the future value, because you can't determine the future value on what happened in the last 6 months over there. And so we tend to spend a lot of our time and effort and studying and worrying about comps and overpaying or underpaying. I swear to God, I've been an advocate for a very long time of pricing every house at $1, because then the market would then determine what it's worth. And these egos of getting it for $10,000 less would no longer get into to play. We go over this phenomenon. The buyer today, if a house is $499,000 is new, would rather be in a bidding war and pay $515,000 than take the house that's been on the market 120 days and offer them $475,000. They have this safety in numbers of feeling better about the transaction when someone else feels better about it also. And so the value perception is kind of changing. I don't have an opinion on whether that house is worth $500,000 or not anymore. I mean, I studied it last night, I studied it again this morning, because I can't compare it to anything other than, do you think, as a consumer, it's worth $500,000? And do you think, are you willing to pay for that based on the numbers that you say? Because if there's another house 3 doors down in a worse location and it's cheaper, are you going to buy the worst location? If it has one more bedroom and bath that you don't need to heat or cool or insure or maintain, is that more valuable to you if you don't need those sort of things? So I think the value perception has to be rethought of a little bit. And really our effort needs to be more in line with other services that the real estate world should be focusing on. We should not be determining value, and we certainly shouldn't be saying it with any sense of authority, because I don't think there is any sense of authority of value. It's not, I don't know if oil is going to be worth $61 tomorrow, or $48 tomorrow, or $71 tomorrow. It's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And the same thing applies to houses. I think they're worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And if you lose this one, and the next one costs $550,000, what'd you save again? And do you feel better about that? So we're often in the emotional game, and we need to get into the reality game of the value of what it is that we're doing. We need to spend our time as realtors being experts on mold, and mold test, and mold remediation, and air quality, and the impact of climate change on our industry. It's way more important in 2018 for you to focus on that and be a service to your client than it is to study the comps upper curvy for the last 6 months, because I don't really know that makes much of a difference anymore. We need to focus more on what's happening in a neighborhood as a whole versus a particular house, because it doesn't matter about this house if it's impacted by traffic or new construction or commercial entities. Does it make something more or less valuable? I remember the apartment complex coming to 7th and Yale, and the outcry in the Heights about this big 4-story apartment complex and how it's going to ruin values and ruin the quality of life in the Heights. And the furthest thing happened from that. You know what happened? Teachers could afford to live in my neighborhood. Young people could afford to keep going to Onion Creek. More people were on the hike and bike trail, which made people feel like it was a safer neighborhood. More people would come and shop, so we get more shopping, so we all like the neighborhood better. All of that's a result of adding density into the neighborhood. People talk about the number one trend I think that we're going to see is what do people look for in a house? And they say walkability. They don't want to walk, you know that, right? They're not going to walk necessarily. They want to live in a walkable neighborhood because they want to see the activity. 20 years ago, we talked about people loving porches. It's because it's a sense of neighborhood. You see your neighbor out versus going through the suburbs in Cinco Ranch Section 17 and you drive into your driveway and you go into your house and you never see your neighbor. Inner city neighborhoods are different because you see the activity on the street. It makes your neighborhood more desirable when you see dog walkers, when you see people pushing the strollers, when you see people running, when you see people biking. I'm not walking to Antidote from 205 Balin. I'm hot as hell by the time I get there. But I want to live in a neighborhood where I could if I wanted to. And I'm still going to probably Uber there and Uber my way home. I'm not necessarily going to walk, but I want to live in a walkable neighborhood. I want to live in a diverse neighborhood, even though there are things about diversity that we don't like. That's still what we're going to clamor for. So, our value perception has got to be placed back into these areas over here. They were going over these 10 questions every realtor should ask in 2018. Did it flood? That's kind of an actual question here, right? So did it flood or not? But that's not. What's the cost of your homeowner's insurance? I mean, these sort of things. Flooding. We are going to talk about flooding all of 2018. You're going to get so tired of hearing about flooding, but I think it's irresponsible as the broker if I don't bring these things up and that you're not as well aware of it as you can be, because that is going to constantly change. No one is going to be able to say with certainty what's going to happen in March or in June or by the end of 2018. There's going to be a constant evolution over there, and you're constantly going to be questioning myself, did I give good advice or not? And what you're going to get is the best advice you can based on the information that we have. But I will make certain assumptions. It's going to rain again. We're going to have flooding again soon in Houston, Texas. It's just a function of where is it going to flood. It's not if it's going to flood. And how many houses are going to flood as a result of flooding conditions. And what are we going to do to impact those sort of things. In neighborhoods that still historically did not flood in Harvey or have not flooded before will flood in the future. Okay? Hear exactly what I'm saying. Neighborhoods, streets, and houses that have not flooded yet to this point are at risk for flooding in the future because climate change is changing the way that houses flood. The development pattern of the city is changing the way streets flood. The continued development of the city is increasing the opportunity for houses to flood on streets that have never flooded before. I'm not talking about a storm surge. I'm not even talking about rising bayous. I'm talking about development patterns with the humidity and the climate change that we're seeing. You're going to see more flooding. So what is the preparation for that? And what are we doing as a result of that? Houston is flooded for all century, flooded in 1900, or flooded in 1950. I mean, the dams and the reservoirs are a result of tremendous flooding downtown during the 1940s and 1950s. So something was done, and it altered the path of that flooding of downtown. But it didn't mean that there wasn't still flooding in the city. It just meant it flooded in different areas. And you're going to continue to see those sort of things. So we will focus our efforts on mold remediation, air quality, life after flooding, preventative measures. Maria and Frank better get damn well equipped on cinder block construction. Even today, the Houston Mod announced winners of mid-century modern houses redone all with new materials. Get off of wood frame construction and get onto steel frame construction. Get on to cinder block construction for the first floor. Get on to rising foundations and different types of foundations and things. These are going to be patterns of things that I think we're going to see. Raising the garages, the height of a typical garage better get to 15 feet pretty soon so that we can add lifts to all of these garages so the cars don't flood during the street flooding. Because the raised pyramid houses may not flood, but if the cars flood every other year, no one's going to feel good about that. So the standard height of a garage should increase accordingly to accommodate a lift. Or people are going to be moving their cars every April through September to Oklahoma because they're going to be nervous about their $100,000 cars flooding. You're going to be nervous about it in the street, you're going to be nervous about it in your driveway, and you're going to be nervous about it in your garage. So it ought to be the number one trend that we see in future new construction, the ability to raise your cars out of the flood zone within your own garage. And garages themselves may become obsolete. I don't know about that, but I do know that we're going to have to get the cars where they don't flood. But the role of the realtor is constantly changing. It's not like it was. Remember, I went to work, we all came to HAR, we bought the contracts and we put the purple carbon in between them and we wrote the contract out and I took it over to Willie Hudson over there, and that's how we did it. We don't do that anymore, right? I barely know how DocuSign works, but soon we're gonna get DocuSign, just put your thumbprint over there because it'll all do it from your thumbprint. But it's constantly going to change. Our expertise has to change and keep up with those responsibilities. I think people are going to be more critical, more. I think that they're not trusting of the sellers today. I think we're going to see that all throughout 2018. They're going to be looking, the highest level of scrutiny of houses that we've had in a very long time is going to be entering into the arena for 2018. The time of opening the door and 3 or 4 hour inspection, they're probably gone by the wayside. You're going to get so many inspections into these houses. You're going to get binders of these inspection reports. And are you going to be able to decipher that information for a buyer and for a seller? And when the first transaction doesn't work out, we just are going to get used to the first transaction not working out. And then you have to arm yourself. The best thing you can do for your seller is then take the information and put it in a manner such that the next buyer can digest it. If we went, every one of us, to the doctor right this second, they'd find something wrong with you, right? They'd find something that's precancerous, something that they'd scare the hell out of you. Except you're going to be just fine, and you're going to learn to deal with each of it, and you can take a vitamin and move on down the road the next day. So I think these houses, we're going to get used to this sort of environment for a while. And beautiful thing, they need us. Okay? It takes those little apps and those little websites and those little procedures, and it makes them obsolete because they can't do what we are just talking about. That takes a trained professional with a certain amount of experience and a certain amount of support staff to be able to go out and help the individuals navigate the purchase process and navigate the selling process. If it were easy and you could just do it all online, everyone would do it, and they wouldn't pay 6%. They wouldn't. You can't blame them. They could save hundreds of thousands of dollars if they could sell that house that way. But because it's not going to be that easy to sell that house that way, you're going to have to show the value of what it is that we're doing. And I think it's the nuts and bolts of these sort of transactions that are going to become more and more important. We need to rethink how we sell a house also. We need to get off this mindset of telling people these factual statements, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,681 square feet. We need to stop altogether and wipe the slate clean and rethink about why someone should buy the house. You know, what is the vision of this house? What are they really buying? And what about the lifestyle are they really buying about? Because that's more what we're selling than a certain amount. So I kept thinking, we had this conversation last night. I want all of you to assume that every house is a 300 square foot micro unit, okay? I don't care if it's 7,000 square feet, I want you to think that it's 300 square feet. And when you have 300 square feet of a micro unit, what are you really selling? You're selling the other amenities around that micro unit. You're selling the sense of community. You're selling its access to hike and bike trails. You're selling its proximity to grocery stores. You're selling the local schools. You're selling how close it is to the coffee bar or to work or to sports or to arts or to climate or to nature. We have to think like that a little bit, and we haven't been thinking like it to give people a reason that they would want to buy a house other than it has 4 bathrooms or 3 bathrooms. So I don't think they care about that sort of stuff a little bit, but that's not what we should be selling. They can find that information on their own. If we're spending our time telling someone something they already know, we're wasting our time. We're not even worthy. Because that's the information they already know. Y'all know there's 50 states in the United States, right? There's 50 states, okay? You don't need to be told that there's 50 states in the United States. You need to be told there's 50 stars on the flag. What you want to hear about is the experience at Yellowstone, or skiing, or whitewater rafting, or the thrill or the exhilaration of an event or a location. That's what they're selling in the travel world, not whether the elevation is 16,000 or 14,000 or 12,000. I don't know any of that shit, and nor do I care what the elevation of Mount Rainier is. I want someone to sell me the experience and make me want to go to Mount Rainier. What can I get there that I'm not already getting? We've got to be thinking like that. What is the impact of technology in this house? What's the impact of technology into the neighborhood? What's the traffic flow in a neighborhood? What's the access points? We've got to rethink a little bit and not just try and tell people something that they already know or they found out without you. Or we're going to find ourselves irrelevant. And if we're not doing it, someone else is going to be picking up and doing it. So we're going to continue to focus on those sort of things in 2018 presentation, but I got off track for just a moment there. But yeah, I want us to connect. We're going to continue to focus on the value of a realtor to the consumer and what our true value is. Our little conversation after lunch is about being the change maker, and it's this panel. And what I really wanted to do was surround you around 4 people I think are just impressive in our city. They're not here, so I can talk about them. But they're people I want to talk to because I think they're doing things in our city. And they have a perspective about what it is that our city can become. And they have a perception about neighborhoods and our profession. So we're going to hear from Dr. Asada Richards. If you ever get the chance to talk to Asada Richards, talk to Asada Richards. She's a fascinating individual. And she has this great perspective of community and sense of community and value and displacement. And I think you're going to be overly impressed with her. Danielle is over boards and commissions, and she's truly, her focus is on millennials and diversity throughout the city. It can't just be for rich white people. It's got to be for other people. And so her job is to place and put people in power and in empowerment who look like the city of Houston. Are they younger? Are they Asian? Are they disabled? Are they, green, yellow, brown, and red? And do our boards and commissions and the decision makers of our city reflect not only the city of today, but the city of tomorrow? We have someone from Houston First whose primary task is to sell Houston. So if you had a $500 million budget to sell Houston, what is it that you would sell and who would you be selling it to? So what is the messaging about Houston? Because this is relocation companies and people's impression of city. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in that arena through Houston First and the Bureau of Tourism. Both, and a lot of people come for a convention, but many of them come back and live here and stay. Who else do we have? Nancy started off with the Chronicle, is just the real estate reporter in the Chronicle in her Looped In series or whatever, and has a perception about real estate, and she's going to give us her perception. And I want us to interact, to talk to them. They're going to talk to us, but the goal of that panel is for you to be able to interact and talk with them and see what they're doing, and influencing the way the city works. We're going to continue to focus, and hope that you'll continue to focus on the sense of city engagement. You need to, and we've been focusing on this for a decade now, but why is someone going to choose you, and what message? We've done a very good job of explaining what Boulevard Realty does. What we must question, what is Brandon's strength? And where is he branding himself? Is it the new father? Is it new construction? Is it this Garden Oak schools, one versus the other? But your messaging needs to be defining yourself and not so generic anymore. It can't just be blah, 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 blah. It's going to have to be more specific. What specifically are you branding? I want us all to go through our bios. I want us to wipe them clean and start completely over with a fresh perspective of 2018. If you're saying the same thing, then you're not saying it right anymore. I mean, I think you need to rethink, what are you saying to someone who's considering between you or Laura Sweeney or Ashton Martini? And what is it that you can say that will get one of those people? Laura maybe sold $95 million worth of houses, but not everyone wants to use Laura Sweeney. They're going to want to use someone else for a particular reason. As a new father, I'm well equipped of dealing with issues related to postpartum depression and motherhood and access, quick access to schools and parks and activities near for children. Chuck E. Cheese. Where's the closest Chuck E. Cheese? I don't know what people do today. That's what we used to go to over there. I think you have to rethink the message that you're sending. And each of us, we need you to redo your bios and along this message. And you need a one-page flyer that's speaking to a particular audience. It doesn't matter what the audience is. It can be dog lovers. It can be millennials. It can be people aging in place. There is a whole marketplace of people, as they grow wealthier, who are going to make changes in their housing because of the tax code. They may not all do it. If you're still earning a living and you're still making money, I don't think it makes much difference one way or the other. But if you retire at 60 years of age and you start paying a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 tax bill and you don't have any write-off, you're going to sell some of those $2 and $3 million houses. You're going to come buy a new $1.25 million house in a different neighborhood. And we need to be marketing to those individuals over there. We need to be marketing to what is an affordable community. And I think it's very difficult. My son over there cannot afford to live in the Heights. He's grown up looking at the Heights and saying the Heights is a great place to live. I want to live there. That's not who bought in the Heights 20 years ago. They had bars on the windows and pink asbestos siding. Star, what did y'all pay for that house on 16th Street when you moved there?
We paid
$75,000 when you moved to the Heights. And did it look just like it does today? No, it doesn't. We have to go with new blinders onto new locations, and you need to start going to Denver Harbor. You need to start going to the other side of Acres Homes. You're going to have to go to someplace in Cashmere Garden. You're going to have to, there are plenty of $75,000 houses and $110,000 houses and $130,000 houses in Houston, Texas. They just don't look like the $500,000 houses. And someone will be able to go and make a good living by focusing on some of these other neighborhoods and being a visionary about how rapidly things can change. And that can be the very best investment for the 25 to 33-year-old. Many of them are going to rent. I'm convinced that what they're saying is true. Some people are going to want to rent, and I think a fair amount of our population is going to want to rent. I think if you're in the $2,000, $2,500 range, you're going to want to rent. I don't think people paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month to rent want to share a wall with anybody else, want to be at risk of their landlord not repairing their AC, or making them live with a leaky faucet, or not fixing the broken gate. They're going to get frustrated with that, and they would rather buy a house. People are going to buy houses. It's just what price point houses are they going to buy? And maybe they're not going to push themselves forward to buy way above their means. They're going to buy a house. They're not going to be subject to moving every year because of some prick landlord out there. And most people are not good landlords, okay? Let's just be real clear about it. They're the best people on earth are really not landlords.
Hey.
They can be. They can be. But I just say that's not the typical experience of a tenant out there. Does not have the most responsive landlords on earth. If you live there and you're behind your house, or that's your one investment, it's one thing. But people that have a lot of houses are typically not the best experience for people paying a high price point for rent. Difference if you're paying $700